There is nothing in this physical plane that exists that does not have a reflection. Anything that does not have a reflection doesn't exist. So what makes you think that you can exist without being mirrored? Hi, I'm naomiolutayo, and I'm the brand priestess, and I partner with spiritual Black women founders to bridge the gap between their brand misalignment and their fully actualized self and their brand. If you enjoy what you hear today, make sure you click the link in the description and join my newsletter called Letters from My Living Room, where I share deeper revelations just like this. All right, so let's get into today's video. We know we exist because others can reflect our awareness onto us. You can see me, like you're watching this video, because the light that is reflecting off of the screen into your eyes is being absorbed into your brain, or not absorbed, but processed in your brain as me in this video is happening. It's a mirror. I'm not the best person to ask about the science, but it's a mirror. Light is reflecting off of the screen into your eyes, being processed in your brain, and you are seeing me. Mirrors work by light reflecting off of something and back into our eyes. So every single thing that we see, because of light that is coming into our eyes and we're seeing, that's how mirrors work. So we know that we're beautiful because we see ourselves. The world tells us that we're beautiful. We get praise, or maybe we win a pageant. We get a lot of likes on Instagram. I know that I'm tall because I can see my height well, I'm not tall, but when we know we're tall, you know you're tall, you're short, or your height, whatever it is, because we see ourselves in comparison to the heights of others. I know I'm Black because what comes back, the pigment that comes back into my eyes is my color. You know what you are because you can see it. So what about the non-physical things like intellect, essence, aura, beauty, brilliance? Well, not beauty, but talent and ambition. The only way you can know what is true for you on the inside is if you can mirror that within yourself. If you know what brilliance is, you can say, I am brilliant. If you've experienced intellect, you can say, I am intelligent. If you've experienced talent, you can say, I am talented. Even though these things aren't necessarily physically displayed outside of how it's physically displayed, but they're things within you. The only way that you can tell that those things exist within you is because you first witness with your own senses that talent, that intellect, the intelligence, so on and so forth. And outside of people's responses or validation of you, you know those things are true because you have the degree. You know those things are true because of your parents' affirmations, peer approval, public recognition. There are things in this physical plane that reinforce what's true for within. So even let's say you can say, I'm compassionate. You won't know you're compassionate until somebody else on the outside tells you that you are compassionate, or you're getting the feedback from your interactions with people that you are compassionate. This is called mirroring. Mirroring is when truth meets awareness and acknowledgement. It has to be both. Mirroring is when truth meets awareness and acknowledgement. It always has to be both. And it has to be both because it has to be both for mirroring, because when you are aware of something, it reads that there is knowledge of a situation or a fact, meaning the awareness of something affirms that this is a fact, that this is true, this is real. And in terms of why you need acknowledgement, it is the admittance of the existence or truth of something. So not only are you aware of something, or you're knowledgeable that this is a fact, but now you're also admitting that this is a fact. So when someone says that you're smart, there is knowledge, head knowledge that you're smart, but also when they admit that to you, which always requires for you to have an externalization of that acknowledgement, that is how you know you're truly mirrored. It has to be both, the awareness and the acknowledgement. Now, I want to talk about self-mirroring, because not all of us were raised with the privilege of being mirrored by our caregivers or the people we were around. Self-mirroring is honestly one of the highest and most rare skills a human can have. Think of it. In this world, seeing is believing. We get certifications for everything. Our existence is validated by someone else's, or someone empowers their acknowledgement of us. So to be able to stand and say, despite all of that, and even just maybe what we may have lacked in childhood, and say that this is so, I am, that is rare. And it may not seem rare at first, but it is rare. And in my eyes, that's occultic level mastery. That is something that most people will never reach. But if you've been watching my videos, then this is something that, give it some time, you're going to reach it for sure. We learn who we are, what we are, where we are, why we are, by having our innerness reflected back on to us. And that's where I'm talking about how if we don't have that growing up, how do you know who you are? Who are you? I know for me, it was very difficult to form an identity because I was very much isolated. Like, I grew up in the attic. It sounds weird, but I really was raised. I mean, not raised. I wasn't technically raised, but my parents had me in the attic. That's where I was for most of my childhood. And of course, my parents were very strict, so I did not get properly socialized. So one of my biggest challenges growing up has just been understanding myself and who I am in my identity. So many kids could say like, oh, my name is Cassandra. My name is, what's the name? All the names are just slipping from my mind. My name is Curtis. I don't know. My name is Jamal, whatever. And that name carried weight because they had experiences, they've had reflections, they've had love that reinforced their identity. But for me, I had my name, but that was kind of all I had. I didn't have a lot of reflection. So even going into adulthood, it was really difficult to say like, I am. I didn't know who I was. And we'll get into, later in the video, we'll get into more of why that is a problem outside the obvious reasons, but we'll get into it. So because as kids, we don't have the ability to self-identify, we don't have the ability to name ourselves. We need that mirroring. And it relates to how we even interact with other mirrors, the 3D realm, and other people in our adulthood. Our parents give us our name. Our grade school teachers recognize our abilities. Peers validate our social standing. Romantic partners give us feedback on our sexuality and our sensuality. Movies give us awareness of how other people live, and communities communicate our place in society. So we're always being mirrored about who we are. And more often than not, we don't get to choose these mirrors. Like, we didn't ask to be born here. We didn't ask to be named our names, right? And so when you don't experience that, or if you experienced a version of that was fractured, where what was being mirrored back onto you wasn't true, what happens? All right? If the only times that life or people reflect onto you is when you're being useful, if the only time life or reality is reflecting back onto you is when it's telling you that you're something that you're not, that you're ugly, that you are at the bottom of society, what happens? For me, like I mentioned, like I was a very sheltered kid. I was not properly socialized, so the chances I did have to be mirrored were slim. When I was talking to my parents, it was the only thing that was mirrored positive to me was when I was in service. It was like, oh, Naomi, you cooked something so good. Thank you. That was great. But any other thing that I did, it was, you're going to fail at that, or whatever my parents decided to pair it back onto me. Short story, I was raised in an abusive household, so you can only assume, right? And I didn't have the capacity as a child to say, no, I am not a failure. I'm not stupid. I'm not so-and-so. I didn't have that. I didn't have that capacity. So what did? I absorbed it. The mirror became an absorption of everything that I was taking in. And this repeated in church, in school. I dealt with some abuse in religious circles a lot as well. And it was hard because thankfully I was an intelligent kid. So I knew I was smart, but I couldn't accept that about myself. Because I was building businesses since I was like 7 years old. I taught myself cosmetic chemistry at 14 years old. I learned how to cook at 7. Like I was teaching myself all of my coursework by myself as a homeschool kid when I think I was 14 at that time. Like I had proof to like in myself that I was intelligent, that I was smart, that I wasn't who my parents said I was. But then when I would go out or when I would navigate other circles, that's not what was reflected back on me. I got a lot of negative feedback, and honestly, that was the least of it. What was really damaging was the fact that there was nothing mirrored back at me at all. Because remember, most of my time, 90% of my time outside of school was spent in that attic that my parents kept me in. And when I was around people, I was largely ignored by my parents unless it was abuse, or even when I think after a certain point in school, I completely shut down. So like I was very invisible. I didn't speak to people. I was very anxious ridden. Like I didn't speak to anybody. So then there was nothing to base myself off of. And I will say, because of how my parents were and because of certain things that were going on, not to go into too much detail, there were key people in my life who intentionally withheld mirroring. So what does that look like? If you see a child who is literally reading like several grad school level textbooks for fun, if you have your toddler ask you to teach them calculus, if you have your child at 14 years old formulating products to sell her hair care products at events and selling them online, everything, and she has not even hit 15 years old yet, if your daughter, or me in this case, if I have been able to have so many amazing things that I've accomplished before I was even 15, 16 years old, and you have not affirmed me as a kid, mind you, I'm a kid, needing my parents and the people around me to mirror to me who I am because I don't have the capacity to develop that yet. And that's not mirrored. Like you're not taking what is obvious and mirroring it back to me so I can gain the confidence to grow into an adult who believes in herself and can actually curate a life that is hers. What is going on? And I know it's not just me who has dealt with that. I've heard stories of people who were kind of treated as like the cash cow of their family. So outside of their usefulness for the family and creating money or providing for them, they were just kind of discarded. So all the other parts of them were just ignored, or their dreams were ignored. Things like that. Like when you grow up and nothing is mirrored to you because it was withheld from you, that's evil. If you've been watching my videos, for example, any of the videos I talk about the flow of reciprocity, you will understand why it's evil. And I may or may not link it down below if I remember it. I don't know. But if not, just Google my name, the brand priestess, naomiolutayo, and the flow of reciprocity, or just reciprocity, you'll find it. So if you've watched those videos, or if you're on the way to watch those videos, you're going to understand more of what I'm saying. But my point is that we're all mirrors. This life is one big mirror. Nothing exists without our inner agreement about what is here, right? So many of us have been not just mirrored out of distortion, but we've been denied the very mirroring that would have saved us. Years of misalignment, years of low self-esteem, years of doubt. To me, that's evil. Especially when the adults around you as a kid knew and they could perceive your brilliance, your beauty, everything. Like, how many of you have had parents who were jealous of you, jealous of your beauty, jealous of your talent, jealous of your intelligence, And instead of saying like, oh, my daughter is so beautiful, let me affirm her and build her up, they tore you down. That is evil. And it's evil because of the flow of reciprocity, the law of reciprocity. It's evil because people are ignorant about these things. They know who you are before you know who you are, specifically concerning the adults in our lives. They know who you are. People can discern that you're special, that you're chosen, that you're called, that you have these things within you laying dormant because you're a literal child. They know that. And so anything outside of your potential that is mirrored back onto you is intentional. I promise you, there is nothing unintentional about mirroring. Specifically concerning a child, nothing unintentional. To be mirrored correctly is to be seen for who you are, greatness, flaws, and all, everything. To be seen in the fullness and the roundness of who you are, that's information. And that's information that you need to self-actualize. So we all know that if you have a child and you can't provide for them and they're going hungry, we know that's wrong, and we give compassion for the mothers and fathers who have taken the effort to make sure that their kids are provided for. I'm not talking about that, but we can understand that it's wrong when a child is not fed. We can understand when it's wrong when a child is not sheltered. We know that, we understand that. Those are at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like our most basic necessities, we know it's wrong when a child is not given those things. But then when we get higher up on the needs, like community, connection, actualization, transcendence, we kind of bargain. We're like, oh, we don't need it, but we need those things. So when you aren't being mirrored, those that need to be actualized, to transcend, those needs at the very top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that is being withheld from you. And the thing is, no one's thinking this. Like I don't hear anyone saying this. No adult is thinking in their mind. Well, most adults aren't thinking this, right? It's always filtered through their own self that their lack of mirroring or their incorrect mirroring of you is happening. They're not saying, I'm not going to give her what she needs according to the Maslow hierarchy. They're not saying it like that. It's going to sound differently in their minds, right? But that's what's happening. It's your denial of something that you need to form into a fully functioning, thriving adult. So when these key people in your life see something like that in you, whether it's your intellect, your skill, or just a bright star, if you're spiritual, you know what I mean. When they see that and they don't offer you correction, they don't offer you admiration, acknowledgement, they don't provide mirroring for you to become aware of yourself, that's intentional withholding. And let me give you an analogy to explain another reason why it's so bad, because this has just been something that's so normalized, especially in the Black community. I don't want to say that. I will say it's very normalized among us, especially for Black women, where our mirroring is denied. How many of you have been told you can't wear something because you're gonna cause someone to stumble? That's another example of it. How many times have you been passed over for somebody else because people were threatened by your ability to sing, maybe in choir? I don't know. Whatever it is, these are all repeatable offenses of lack of mirroring. How many times have you been told that you're just aggressive just because you're Black? Are you aggressive or are you passionate? Or how many times maybe you made a friend or got into a friend group and you were told that you're just too much. You're neurodivergent. You're told you're too much. That's incorrect mirroring, and that is intentional. It may not be fully conscious, but it's intentional. Anyways, here's an analogy I have for you. Imagine you have a best friend and you guys are both in school. She started her period that day and she bled through her pants, her white pants. And let's say she's in a crop top, so it's not like there's anything covering it. It's just full display of the blood. You guys are like this, close friends. And you see her. You see how people are staring at her and she's kind of subconscious, like, I don't know why people are being weird to me. And no one's saying anything. The teachers didn't say anything. The principal didn't say anything. None of the students didn't say anything. And you are aware of this as her best friend. You're seeing this blood on her pants and you say nothing. All day, she's leaving blood marks on her chairs. All day, she's walking around and feeling weird, like, why are people staring at me? No one says a thing. Are you a good friend? Are you? If your daughter came home and said that, told you that her friend did that to her, what would you do? You would want to go beat her ass, right? She's not a good friend. So why is it that when we are surrounded by the people who are supposed to love us, supposed to nourish us and be in alignment with our highest version of ourselves, why is it that when we're mirrored, it's inaccurate? Why aren't we being told about ourselves properly, like in truth? Why are the people who can truly see us, for example, parents, mentors, things like that, why are they withholding the full reflection of who you are? When that friend had the blood on her pants, you were consenting to her public humiliation. That is called public humiliation. And on the inverse, when the people around you refuse to mirror you, that is spiritual humiliation, and that is an act of violence. So many of us have been walking around with bloody stains on our pants and no one's telling us. There's someone on your team who's already clocked a pattern that if they put you onto it, your business wouldn't have shut down. Some of you had a parent who saw your brilliance as a toddler and kept it to herself. And now you're only 39 years old realizing I was never stupid. My mom was just jealous of me. Some of your friends knew your man wasn't shit, and then they still let you get married. They knew something that would have prevented you from getting married, and they withheld that information. They withheld that mirroring for you to choose better for yourself. An investor knew the advice that they gave you was going to be detrimental, but they gave it to you anyways because they had ulterior motives. Having people in your life who refuse to reflect the fullness of who you are, flaws and all, flaws and the good, everything, and everything in between, that is sabotage. That is sabotage. If you watch somebody's house burning down and you stand there with the hose and they don't know that you're there, but you just see it and you're like, I'm just gonna let them figure it out. That's sabotage. You're being sabotaged. And I'm so tired of not having us as a collective put words to it, because if we called it for what it is, we would not accept this. Like, if we fully recognize that what we're up against is people weaponizing their reflection to keep us in the dark, and we call that sabotage, we will be so much more careful as spiritual Black women founders who we let in our lives. We'll be so much more careful about who we partner with, who we marry, who we befriend, who we allow in our orbit. Because all our circle is a mirror of who we are. Honestly, I know I grew up Christian, so vanity and sensuality, all those things were so out of, like, such a no for me. And vanity has gotten such a bad rep. But honestly, to live is to be vain. To live is to be sensual. To live is all about you, because you are the only one having this experience. This is your life. So yeah, it might seem a little bit vain to think in that way of like everyone has to mirror me correctly. But what is the alternative? We have all lived the alternative. We've had the jealous mother. We've had the envious father. We've had the malicious mentor. All of us have experienced that. And we know how much, and we are living in the aftermath of a life of being improperly married. And I know I am. I did not know I was smart until a few years ago. I'm in my 20s and I didn't know I was smart. I didn't know I was beautiful until a few years ago. I didn't know I was beautiful. And do you see how that puts you at a disadvantage? Because when God, your ancestors, whoever, comes to you and tells you, I want you to do something, or I'm commissioning you with this vision. My whole channel is about realignment and aligning your brand and yourself as a founder to mirror the vision that God has given you. How can I even think that that's possible for me if everybody in my life has shown me every reason but who I am? Every reason to not pursue this because I'm just gonna fail. If everyone in your life is saying you're gonna fail, or this is not gonna work, or just complete contradiction for who you are and the highest version of yourself, how are you gonna get there? Some people would rather watch you struggle, even when their mirroring could save you so much heartache because of jealousy and envy. Always one of the two. Either they want what you have, or they're mad that they can't have it, or they're mad that you have it. Lack of mirroring is always jealousy or envy, always. If you saw a child on the side of the road without their parents and you walk by, that's weird. That's weird, wouldn't it? So why are we acting like it's normal to have people in our lives who deny us the reflection that could save our lives, our businesses, our identities? Would you not say something to your friend if she had stains on her pants? And in this analogy, this thing doesn't have to be mad, but the impact is the same. It's the same, and I know you feel it. I know you feel it, because now at 28 years old, sometimes 53 years old, you're looking back and you're like, I was never the problem. I spent my entire life trying to fix myself, and it was never me. I was not the problem. That is violent. That is an act of spiritual violence. There are people who have built their comfort off of not knowing who you are, and they're fine with that. That's why when you begin to see yourself clearly, and when you develop the skill of self-mirroring, being a self-generative person, now it's a threat, because your win means that they lose. They have linked or binded their win to your loss. That's why they work so hard to keep you in the dark. That's patriarchy and capitalism for you, and colonialism, all of the big three. You know, as I was scripting this video, or before I scripted this video, I was thinking about the story of Joseph in the Bible. And I've always related to his story, honestly. And you know, I grew up a PK, so I've heard this story several times. I'm sure I even played Joseph in a play at some point, right? But one thing that stuck out to me, like I didn't even really think about it at this point, was when his brothers were plotting to kill him. Mind you, Joseph has done nothing to them. He's the baby of the family. He's done nothing but receive favor from his father. And I'm not going to say he wasn't probably annoying, being like, I know how young his kids are. I mean, I know I'm the middle kid, so I know how it is to be younger than somebody in your family. You get away with certain things. You can be annoying. You can be a nuisance, yeah. But that's your blood. And Joseph told them the dreams that he had about him being in a position of authority over them. And they wanted to kill him for that. And I realized that they thought of Joseph and said, I would rather have him dead and live with the consciousness of a murderer than let him have what's due unto him. I would rather have my brother dead. I would rather distress my father than let Joseph have what is coming to him. There are people in your life who are saying the exact same thing. And there are people in my life who are saying the exact same thing. There are people who have built their comfort off of you not knowing who you are. Joseph knew who he was. He was telling them. He knew. And they knew who he was, and they said, you can't have that. You know, they could have, as Joseph's older brothers, literally, how many of them were like 9? He had a bunch of brothers. They could have taken him under his wing and say, hey, you're a little bit of an ass. Let's work that out. You know how men are, how they could have just corrected each other and let him grow. They didn't even have the foresight to think like, oh, I mean, maybe they did. They didn't even want to think of the possibility that he could have won. Because in my eyes, I'm like, if I'm jealous of my little brother, I'm going to milk him like a cow. Like, let him get to where he's going and let's use him. Let's extract from him. They didn't even want him to win. They wanted him to lose so bad that they wanted to kill him. And then they settled on the next best thing, which is making him a slave. A complete 180 from the version of Joseph that they were made acquainted with from the dreams that they shared with him. They refused to mirror his greatness, and he had to learn the hard way. And it worked out, but I don't think it had to be like that. I believe in infinite possibilities. It did not have to go that way. It went that way because the people who were entrusted in his care could not stand for him, not anyone else but him, to have what was due unto him. That is what you're up against as a spiritual Black woman founder. Because you are not just here to make money. You are here to shift systems. You are here to rule your bloodline and set them up for generations. You are literally here to tear down this very systems that were made to oppress us. And you may be thinking, well, how am I going to do that with skincare? How am I going to do that with a fashion brand? Don't minimize something just because we like to give credence to things other than that. Don't do that. Just know. And if you've been watching, continue to watch my videos and subscribe so you can know when I post and everything. But the longer you watch my videos, the more calibrated you're going to become as the leader, the matriarch, the chief alignment officer of your company, of your brand, of your life. This is why you've been magnetized here. This is your mirror today. This entire channel is for you to act as a mirror. And I am sorry for the fact that you have not been properly mirrored. And I'm sorry to the versions of myself who have had to live so much life without having the world affirm her brilliance, and she had to do that for herself. But I am also so proud of you that despite it all, despite what society has told us, despite what was seemingly destined for us, we have broke the odds and we're here today. And so if you have been able to look at this as your mirror, if aligned, I am also positioning this as an invitation to you, as a portal to deeper work with me. If you're a spiritual Black woman founder of a product brand, I want you to DM me so that we can collaborate on what is the best next steps for you to either realign your brand or launch your brand in complete alignment with the vision that God has given you. Anyways, that's it for today's video. Don't forget to subscribe to my newsletter, Letters from My Living Room, to become a house guest. I'll have a letter out going very soon. And make sure to subscribe and click the bell to be notified when my next video goes up. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.